What I want to do is just sort of put the New Mexico thing into a broader context and in terms of my involvement, the involvement of Drug Policy Alliance, its predecessor organizations on medical marijuana. And I think most of you are aware that for me and for DPA, for Drug Policy Alliance, we've been involved in this issue essentially for two reasons. The first is because we see the persecution and prosecution of people who use marijuana for medicinal purposes as really the most egregious aspect of the war on marijuana. That if anybody deserves not to be punished, it's people really using it for medicine. Now, on the other hand, we also believe nobody should be punished for using this sort of stuff, and we think that ultimately we need to move in the direction of making this stuff legal writ large. And our hope has been that by working on medical marijuana, not only would we help people who are using it for medicine, but ultimately would help move and change public opinion so that we can ultimately move towards broader legalization. And it's very hard to say whether or not that second objective is being achieved. We think there's some indications it is actually opening it up, it is changing the imagery of marijuana, but on the other hand, we see marijuana arrest rates going, every year, a new record of number of people getting busted. So it's hard to evaluate our success or failure on that second score right now. Now, New Mexico came in us for a context. The first context was the medical marijuana initiatives of the 90s. Here was 1996, California, Dennis Perone, this quixotic initiative, and I had just started Linda Smith Center. There's an opportunity to get behind it, turn this quixotic initiative into a real thing, get the big money, the Soros, the Lewis, the Sperling, the George Zimmer behind it, get a professional campaign, and win it. And win it we did with a wide open initiative, as you all know right here. Then the challenge was, what do we do next? Go back in 98, 99, 2000, and let's try to sweep the country, at least sweep the West with this stuff, right? So we went to Alaska, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, Nevada, and Maine, in all of these cases with new medical marijuana ballot initiatives. And we hoped that we could win these all, and in fact, we did win them all. It wasn't easy. Nevada, by Constitution, got to win it twice. In Colorado, the Secretary of State screwed us in 98, and people actually voted for it. It was on the ballot. They won. But we won, but then the thing didn't count, and then she died. And then we came back and won it in 2000. In Maine, the bad weather kept us from getting it on the ballot in 98. We came back in 99 and won it. So we won this whole bunch, but we were early on, and we weren't exactly sure what we were doing. And we figured if we did the kind of wide-open California initiative, we'd be shot down. So we tried to figure out that balance, the balance between what was as far as we could push the envelope on the one hand, and on the other hand, what could make us secure that we were going to win it? And also, what did we feel that would make us confident we would win it, but what were the local activists saying, push the envelope, push the envelope? Well, we came up with what we came up with. In Oregon, Alaska, they were pretty good initiatives. Colorado, not as strong as we would have liked. In Washington State, our local partner, Dr. Rob Killian, really didn't want that patient ID thing in there. He was worried about confidentiality issues, so we didn't put that into the Washington State one. I think in retrospect, he now says he wishes we did, because we've seen there have not really been the problems with confidentiality in the other states. But we did this whole bunch, and then by the time we got to 2000, I had come to the conclusion, and to some extent this was a variety of factors, it was also where the major funders' heads were at, was we've made our point with the initiatives. Now let's focus on implementation in Washington, and let's focus on trying to fight this through the state legislative process. That let's do this for many of the reasons that Allison just described, because when you get it through the state legislative process, you go through a protracted and oftentimes agonizing process of educating the legislators and generating not just those 2 weeks of media or maybe a few months, but constant, over and over, the public education that happens. Was that the right decision, by the way? I don't know. I think so, and I know that the resources to keep doing lots more initiatives wasn't necessarily there, but we did what we did, and we started doing it. Now, you all know Gary Johnson in late '99, the Republican governor of New Mexico, he pops out and he goes, let's legalize. And people go, no. And we got to him at that point. We said, look, Governor Johnson, how about talking about legalization of marijuana on the one hand and harm reduction with the other drugs? And he goes, okay, I can get around that. And then let's start moving some bills, including on medical marijuana and treatment instead of incarceration and asset forfeiture reform and a whole range of other incrementalist bills where we know public opinion is on our side. And I'll tell you, New Mexico, you talk about the heartbreak of legislative effort. We've done bills there, 5 times, 6 times, 5 times since 2000, 2001. I can't even remember anymore what year was which. What I remember is where I was standing when the director of New Mexico DPA called me, sobbing in tears, to saying, I can't believe the legislature didn't do it. We got it in 2001 through both houses, and they couldn't just agree on a final bill to reconcile. We got it through other houses. Then Richardson comes in, and Richardson says he doesn't want to deal with this for his first couple of years because it's too linked with Gary Johnson, the Republican. And then we come in 2005, and we get so close. And then 2006, and then 2007. And every year you're dealing with some other idiosyncratic objection. This legislator won't tolerate that, and this one doesn't want this piece. And meanwhile, there's some topical marijuana bill that some legislator has. I don't know what that's about, you know. But I mean, you know, you're always dealing with analysis. What others have described with this crazy process, you know, that you just have to deal with. In 2007, we're moving forward on this thing. You know, in the Senate, I mean, we win it. We get 80% of the votes. We have a majority of Republicans. We're sweeping through legislative committees with almost no dissent. But in the House, we got a major problem. The head of the Speaker of the House, Ben Lujan, is dead set against this thing. And the governor reassures us we've been working on the governor. We got people working on him who have worked on his campaigns. You know, he's aware, of course, and it doesn't hurt that he knows that people like George Soros and Peter Lewis and a lot of others who are major contributors to the Democratic Party are also interested in this issue. That helps, right? So Richardson, he doesn't have this gut feel for the issue, but he knows this is a good thing to do. You know, and we're sort of reassured that with a governor on our side, we can get through both houses. Lujan, we'll deal with Lujan. We got the votes. And then I think it was like March 9th or March 10th. We had the votes going through the House. Lujan strong-armed some people. It goes down. But this time what happens when it went down, and the day after, the director, Rena Shapansky, our remarkable director, calls me in tears. Her phone rings the next morning, and it's Governor Richardson. And he's going, what the hell happened? Can you get to my office right now? And Rena walks into his office, and she goes, Governor, here's what happened. And here's what Lujan did. And here's who we had commitments from, and here's who got twisted. And Richardson goes, I want it. I'm going to fix this. Well, he fixed it. You know, the bill's dead. Once the bill's been dead and defeated, I mean, but there was that wacky little topical marijuana thing. Well, it turns out you can take our bill and tape it onto that one and put the thing back through again. And Richardson canceled his travel plans, made the calls. We had one of my members of my board of directors, Jim Gollin, who also is the chair of the Rainforest Action Network. He hit the ground. He started doing it. And having a spectacular advocate and lobbyist working with, an amazing patient network. And then, of course, we also had Erin Armstrong, who was working for DPA, a beautiful young woman. Her mother had been a high level in the New Mexico Department of Health. And she's living with cancer. And she's in her 20s. And she becomes a kind of moral voice for this thing, a real moral voice. You know, when that bill finally got enacted, the new bill is called the Lynn Pearson, named after the original medical marijuana bill from the 70s, and Erin. It's the first time we have a bill named after a DPA employee. You know, which made us, but it was that combination of patience and lobbying and media and board members and money and politics and the whole thing coming together. I'm not going to get into all the details of the bills. You know, you can look it up on the website on drugpolicy.org or our local New Mexico site, which is called improvenewmexico.org. There's a couple pager right there. The thing that was most interesting about the bill, I mean, we put in some things, for example, a medical advisory board so that you have the 7 medical conditions we could get through the legislature, but now every 6 months this medical advisory board, which is fairly sympathetic, will consider petitions for new conditions to be added. You know, there's all, you know, the number of plants, et cetera, et cetera. You can find the details online. What was interesting, though, was we did put in something that hasn't been in any of the other successful bills, and that was one to authorize the state to move forward on medical marijuana production and distribution. Now, as you all are aware, you know, under federal law, right? But the question is, can we move this thing forward? A few months ago, I was in New Mexico, and Rita and I went to see the Attorney General, what's his name, King, Bruce King, right? And he said, look, the law is the law is the law. I'm the Attorney General. I represent law enforcement. I got to come down against this. And we say, can't you find